Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for this spotlight in October. This is the first spotlight in October 2025. It seems hard to believe. It was just a couple months ago I was surfing in June and July and August, and suddenly it's October. Okay. So this is a really interesting spotlight because what I'm going to be doing now is focusing on the idea of communication. And communication is, as we're going to be talking about it today, is the type of communication we have between ourselves and extraterrestrials, and why that's actually important for you right now. Now let me explain this. Over the entire planet right now, when you look over everything on YouTube and the internet about disclosure and stuff like that, you're hearing things about I3 Atlas, some photograph of some UFO, disclosure this, disclosure that. Are extraterrestrials real? Are there non-human biologics? You know, is this a real photograph of a UFO? So, that type of thing is purposefully meant to dumb you down. That type of thing is purposefully meant to keep you as a slave, a prisoner, to keep you not thinking of what really is going on. There are two groups of extraterrestrials, as we like to call them, the bad ETs and the good ETs. The bad ETs have written, signed agreements with the United States government, apparently the Israeli government, and a few other governments. And it's what they do is they have permission to operate here in underground bases and to do what they call experiments on the human population in exchange for tech transfer, shooting down ET ships, taking the crashed ships and giving the ships to the U.S. government to reverse engineer, and then the occupants get given to the bad ETs for various forms of torture. Now, they don't want you to know anything about that. The existence of the signed written agreements, however, have been talked about by Haim Eshed. It's Haim, and second name is Eshed, who was the former CEO of the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. He's also a decorated general and now a professor. And he thought he was going to get away with it, with talking about it in Hebrew, in a Hebrew publication. But as I've said many times, it turned out many people know Hebrew, and it was immediately translated into a zillion languages. So you can Google it. But the basic idea is that there are written agreements. And so all those people who just sort of ignore all that and ignore everything else that we've done here at Farsight, they're really together with an agenda, knowingly or unknowingly, with what we call the bad ETs that want to keep you in the dark. Secrecy is part of the agreements, the written agreements. They must maintain the secrecy. If they don't keep the secrecy up, the entire house of cards, the entire prison system will collapse. So, where are we now with regard to communications and the good ETs? You see, the populace of the entire planet is stuck on this idea of waiting for the leadership, the administration, the media to acknowledge that there are ETs. Like the people have to say, I won't even think about this unless the president tells me it's correct. What? But that's what they do. Unless there's some type of authoritative governmental pronouncement that the ETs are real, that the UFOs are real, then you have just junk coming out. People won't believe anything. So the whole idea about communication is the good ETs are working on a plan to force disclosure where everything will come out all at once, and it will break that juggernaut of information, and what you get is all of it will just come out and there'll be complete disclosure all at once, and it'll be chaos galore. So, but nonetheless, you'll at least finally be hearing the truth. Now, the issue with that, however, is that when the truth does actually come out, people are going to be saying, well, what the heck have you been doing? Why haven't you been trying to communicate with us before? Why should we believe you? So Farsight's role is to supply a lot of information that you're going to need and going to want, and when disclosure happens, you're going to have a zillion questions, and Farsight's role is create the library, the video library, that answers all those questions that you'll have about everything that's been going on for thousands of years. But Farsight's role also is to show you that the good ETs have been trying to communicate forever. They've been trying to communicate, but this is a prison that's locked down by the bad ETs. They don't have any, the good ETs have no access to the political leadership of any country. They don't have any access to the media, the corporate elites. They don't have any access to governmental associations, corporate associations, nothing. They only have access to the masses, you. And so when the good ETs want to eventually be able to say, we are wanting to talk with you about being free, the question is going to be, have you ever even tried to talk to us before? That's what humans are going to say. And they want to be able to say, are you serious? We've been trying as much as we possibly can. And one of Farsight's role is to show you what they've been trying to do. So all the videos, all the projects that we have on farsightprime.com, that's all part of that as well. But in addition, the ET board meetings that we have and the conversations with Harvey, under their insistence, they are recorded. Now, they are not taken super seriously by mainstream, otherwise, you would be seeing me talk on major venues, and I'd be probably having to have security people all over me and things like that. But the bottom line is that these ET board meetings and the conversations with Harvey are there for your benefit so that you can see their honest, earnest attempts to try to communicate. In addition, extraterrestrials communicate telepathically. They all communicate telepathically. That's how they communicate in the ships, across species, across cultures, across everything. That's how they talk. Now, within subcultures, they do have, audio versions of communication that they often use within certain subcultures, but the general means of communication throughout the entire galaxy, the dominant means, the lingua franca, the way of communicating among everyone, is telepathy. Now, that's very difficult for humans to do for reasons that I've explained a zillion times. I won't go into that now, but humans have a structured situation where they do not have easy ability to communicate telepathically. So Farsight's role is to show humans doing that. We're sort of a halfway place between normal humans that cannot communicate telepathically and extraterrestrials who communicate telepathically as their normal means of communication. At Farsight, you often know of us as remote viewers, and Farsight is known for remote viewing, which is important and which is good. But we do not consider ourselves, we do not talk about ourselves, we do not use the word remote viewers to describe what we do internally. We call ourselves mentalics. Mentalics is the word that came out of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, but basically we use our minds to do a variety of things, and remote viewing is one of those things. It's the thing that most people know of us doing. So we do so much remote viewing under blind conditions, totally blind conditions, all recorded live on video so that you can see it actually happening. But we also do other things with our minds as well, and communicating telepathically is one of those things. And the ET board meetings is your chance to see us communicating telepathically with telepathically capable beings, the extraterrestrials. So our capabilities in telepathy are probably not as good as what the extraterrestrials themselves do. We sometimes, at least I sometimes, most of the other farsighters don't do this, but I often check to say, did I get that right? when I translate telepathic communications into regular verbal stuff that can be picked up with a microphone. And to be quite honest, the extraterrestrials almost always get quite irritated when I do that. They just say, just keep talking. You're doing fine. But every once in a while, my insecurity comes up, and I said, when they're saying something important, I want to make sure I don't insert my own type of thinking in that. I don't want to bias it. I don't want to color it in any way. I want to make sure I'm saying what they're saying. And again, they never complain about what I'm saying, and they're upset when I ask them, did I get that right? Now, none of the other Farsight people do that. None of them. They all just talk telepathically. So at the Farsight ET board meetings, those are special meetings where the ETs come, and there's usually two. Actually, there's sometimes 3 or 4 in the room, but there's 2 at the head of the table that we see. And then everybody else is sitting around, and we record everything. And then we publish it on both YouTube and FarsightPrime.com. We also publish it on YouTube because they are insistent that they want the widest possible audience, and they want to make sure that nobody says afterwards that they were not trying to show these communications. So if the communications are available on FarsightPrime.com as well as YouTube, then the response can be, well, it's always been there. You just haven't seen it. You just haven't looked. You never tried. Or the algorithms are structured in such a way to keep you away from it, but it's not our fault, that type of a thing. So with the extraterrestrial board meetings, we have these meetings where we're talking telepathically, and the Farsight remote viewers are translating the telepathic communications into verbal language that can be picked up with our microphones. Okay, now, we've had many of them, and all those communications are up for everyone to see on both YouTube and FarsightPrime.com. The conversations with Harvey are up on FarsightPrime.com. That's FarsightPrime.com is our major vault, our major storage point for everything that we do, and we're putting things up like constantly. Like just this past week, we put up not only the most recent September extraterrestrial ET board meeting, but we also put up a remote viewing session by Kamaya on Ezekiel and the Ophanim. And then that's fascinating. That's a biblical mystery, archaeological almost, but it's mostly a biblical mystery because it's in the Bible and we're trying to understand it. Ezekiel was what they called a prophet, and he saw ships clear as day, and it's in the book of Ezekiel. And Kamaya had a session where she described those things exactly, always under totally blind conditions. She knew nothing. And at the end of the session, she's told what the target is, and you can clearly see that she knew nothing at all about it. She just reported it. But the accuracy of the remote viewing is like right off the scale. And for those of you who like Lightboard, she did it on Lightboard, which is great. I always like Lightboard too, because it's really a sci-fi feel when you're drawing, and you're drawing on Lightboard and everything is black around. It looks like you're drawing in space. But we also put up El Castillo, and that was a solo project on an archaeological thing, a pyramid, a temple, and that was by Intisam. So we're putting up things like 2, 3, 4 things a week. So you really get a lot when you subscribe to FarsightPrime.com, and you're also helping the mission, helping us do these things, because these things are not easy to do, and we have to pay our remote viewers to do these. This is how they live. We couldn't do this with part-time remote viewers who work at McDonald's all day and are tired and exhausted, and then they come home and then they're asked to do a session. You couldn't do that. They have to do this full-time in order to do this at all. So anyway, that's it. Now, I do not get paid for anything at Farsight, but everybody else does. That's how they pay their rent and things like that. And so every time you subscribe to FarsightPrime.com, you're really helping to make it all happen, because it literally couldn't happen without people who are doing it full time. It just literally could not manifest. It wouldn't occur. You just wouldn't have it. So, all right, so let me tell you now about what we're going to be focusing on today, which is the last 2 extraterrestrial board meetings that were appearing at right here in our office at the boardroom, in the boardroom where the extraterrestrials came and talked to us. There's a commonality between these 2 extraterrestrial board meetings that we had, and that is that the people who came, the extraterrestrials who came to us, were social scientists. Now, among Earth humans, we often think of science in terms of physics or technology, gizmos. But that's not the way it is in the galaxy. The cutting edge of science is not technology or gizmos. These civilizations have been around as long as anyone could possibly imagine, millions of years, and they have already invented everything that could be invented. There's nothing left. And they know all the laws of physics. They know how to get here, to travel interstellar distances, to cross the galaxy. They know how to communicate. They know how they all have the same weapons, the good ETs and the bad ETs. There's no technological advantage one has over the other. So the real cutting edge of science is social science, not technological science. For humans, technological science seems like the cutting edge because there's so much still being developed here. But once you get through all that, it's social science. So the cutting edge of all science in the galaxy is the social science. It's the territory that is still to be explored. And one of the things they're trying to do is a huge experiment to free this planet Earth. Now let me go into a reason why this planet is a planet that's a prison. You see, the bad ETs are a fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian type of organization. And they ran this planet all by themselves with any interference whatsoever back in the old pyramid building days. And you saw what happened then. Everybody on the planet was running around in loincloths building pyramids out of rock. Unless you like working with rock, that was a bad time. Some extraterrestrials came in, there was a battle, and the controlling bad ETs at that time were not able to continue that form of domination, so they started to work behind the scenes and humanity started to slowly develop. And here we are today. The bad ETs want to have sole control over this place again, and there's a reason for it. They want to expand. If you looked at what happened during Hitler's time in Germany, World War II, they were trying to expand. They were going east, they were going west, they were going south. Napoleon tried to expand. Fascist authoritarian governments try to expand. Staying still and constant is death because people can always invade them, so they want to advance. The controlling extraterrestrials, if they go into new places with their current crew, they will run out of the ability to invade these other places. For example, let us say you have a planet of 300 million people, or beings, or whatever, and you start invading the galaxy. With those 300 million people, how many are actually going to be soldiers and stuff like that? Maybe 5 million, 10 million, maybe 30 million, whatever. Well, the more you expand, you're scattering them out, and eventually you have just a few people per ship, and everybody loses the battle. So it's no good. So you see, you have to have an army with a huge number of soldiers and a huge number of support people to manage that army. You need the soldiers or the mercenaries, you need the traders, you need all the prostitutes to service all of those soldiers, mercenaries, and so on. You need all those people, and you need them in such levels of abundance if you're going to expand, especially across the galaxy. Well, Earth is exactly that. They're not interested in the human bodies, the people in their bodies. What you're looking at with me right now is a human body. But the extraterrestrials know this completely, but among Earth humans, it's sort of a mystery. We are ISBs, or immortal spiritual beings. You would call it a soul or spirit, but at Farsight, we don't use that word, soul or spirit, because of all the religious junk baggage that goes along with it. We call ourselves ISBs, immortal spiritual beings. And because we are ISBs, we have the mentalic capabilities that we've been talking about with telepathy and remote viewing. The science of mentalics is called mentology. But the basic idea is that the bodies can be replaced. And if someone is a soldier and killed, well, you can just take the ISB, stuff it into a new body, and send them out and fight again. So it can keep on going. But they need then billions and billions and billions of these ISBs. Again, it's not the physical bodies so much they need is the ISBs. They manufacture the bodies at will. So the ISBs that are here on the planet Earth are about 8 billion, roughly, but about 8 billion. But in the wings, people who have lived and died and not yet come back, I don't know how many there are, but let's say 50 billion or something, 30 billion, 40 billion, I don't know, 100 billion, I don't know how many, but billions that are in the wings. Sort of, you might call it like waiting for a new body, a new incarnation to be born again, things like that. So they need all of those ISBs, and they need them trapped. So they have abilities to keep all the ISBs that are on planet Earth stuck here, whether they have a body or not have a body. So, and we've gone into this a lot in the past with the so-called death traps. And if you haven't seen the death traps project that we have on FarsightPrime.com, go see it. Death traps. It's a whole big project. So what we have is a large population of ISBs, and they need those ISBs in order to expand out into the galaxy. Now, the good ETs in the future found that it happened. And they said, this is terrible. Where did this all start? So they tried to figure out where this galactic invasion really sort of had its nexus. Where did it have that sort of central node? And it turned out that it was on planet Earth, because this is where all the ISBs came from that ended up expanding out. So that's one of the reasons that freeing the planet Earth at this particular time became such a high priority, because there were lots of ISBs here, and this is the resource that they needed more than anything else, the bad ETs. And if they can free the planet at this particular point in time, then that whole galactic holocaust doesn't happen. So that's why it's so important for the good ETs. And that is why the good ETs have flooded the entire solar system with way more resources than the bad ETs have. But the good ETs are free will ETs, and they can't just come in and blast away and kill all the bad ETs and then free the planet that way. They are adamantly fixed to the idea of free will. And there's a whole bunch of other reasons, social science reasons for this as well, but basically they can't free the planet unless there's full disclosure, so that people make a free will choice to say, yes, we want to align ourselves with the good ETs and so on. Then they can take care of the bad ETs. At that point, the bad ETs would be confronted with a battle, a literally physical shootout. And then the bad ETs would be confronted with a planet that they could no longer control anymore, because the cat is out of the bag, so to speak. The secrecy is over, the disclosure has happened, so they can't really control the planet using their normal means anymore. And if they try to fight for it, they're going to lose a lot of ships and personnel. So the only logical thing for the bad ETs to do is to withdraw. But they have to have the disclosure process. The good ETs have to force the disclosure process first before that is possible. So that is one of the primary goals, maybe the primary goal of the entire ET involvement here on Earth. And the ET board meetings are their attempt to help explain themselves. So let's talk about the last two ET board meetings. Now, the one that happened in August was 2 social scientists that came to us. And then the one that happened in September was 1 social scientist who came to us. That one turned out to be my daughter, and her name is Ebonique. And I did not raise her. She was raised on the ships, but she's my daughter. Half genes, half my genes, things like that. She's a hybrid. And the Farsight people met her face to face. Now, they remote viewed her in the past, but this is the first time for them to meet her and to see her face to face. And they had a conversation that was incredible to watch. It was lots of fun. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be talking about today, the extraterrestrial board meeting, and we're going to start with the August extraterrestrial board meeting. And then we will go on into the September extraterrestrial board meeting with Ebonique. Okay, so the August extraterrestrial board meeting had 2 social scientists. Now, remember, this is like the cutting edge of science in the galaxy. If you want to see a book that describes social science as the cutting edge of all science, then it's Isaac Asimov's Foundation books. They're a series. And you start with the Isaac Asimov, the first 3 Foundation books. And that's where Isaac Asimov, who is a social scientist, helps to enable the science of psychohistory to become real. And he has to build a foundation in order to help that happen, and then a second foundation and help that happen. The first foundation is involved with technology type of stuff, and the second foundation is a bunch of mentalics, just like Farsight people that are involved with telepathic things and remote viewing and stuff like that. Okay. Anyway, there's a television series that's on Apple TV, for those of you who are interested in seeing it. It's on the Foundation, and the first 3 books is the basic Foundation series, and the first 2 seasons of the Foundation have already come out on Apple TV, and so that's the first 2 books of the Foundation series, and now we're waiting for the 3rd season to start. But that's a good example of a social science as the cutting edge of science in a whole galaxy. Okay, so the 2 social scientists that came to us last time, in August 2025, they set the stage by basically describing the Earth as a ricocheting bullet. There was that type of an image of world events. World events were just coming apart. Wars, martial law, crises, all over the place. And you see that happening now. Now, the actual events, the wars, the crises, and everything were actually designed by the bad ETs, but they were set in motion to happen at distant times so that they would be stretched over like 30 years. What the good ETs did was to take those same crises that they did not create, but they were able to move them so that they all happen at the same time. And when is that time? Hey guys, it's now. So that's why you're seeing so many things happen, and why things are going to spill out of control even further as the days, weeks, and months proceed. So these ET visitors that came to us are parts of my side, the good ETs. They're not random, these crises. These crises are part of basically a social science experiment. And you should see Kamaya talking about this whole thing. You mean I'm part of an experiment? You got to see it, but it's on the ET board meeting for August. And it's basically designed to break humanity's hypnotic trance of institutional dependence, where you're watching your Instagram feed or YouTube news, mainstream news, waiting for president of a country to make a major announcement, stuff like that, and you're so fixated on that. That's got to be broken, because that's how the ETs, the bad ETs, control you. So in order for the good ETs to get a word in edgewise, that's got to be broken. It's got to be like, what happened? What happened? You have to sort of wake up out of that trance. The mainstream media basically has you in a trance. You're more focused on marriages happening among celebrities, Taylor Swift, Brad Pitt, and things like that, than you are focused on things that are actually happening in the world. So that set of crises is sort of destined to happen. Now, the problems of Europe and the United States are particularly interesting in all of that. You see, Europe is watching the war in Ukraine go through its things, but it's really watching it distantly. The people of Europe aren't really being involved in it. The people in the United States are not really being involved in it. They're sending funds, money, weapons to Ukraine for the Ukrainians to fight it. The United States is sending money and weapons to Ukraine for Ukrainians to fight it. But it's not really affecting the Europeans, and it's not really affecting Americans. America's always been defended mostly by two oceans, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Well, the enemies of the United States have figured that out. It's not a big surprise. So the enemies know that the only way the United States will stop meddling in their affairs is for the conflicts to erupt inside the continental United States, similarly with Europe. So what you can expect is that the Ukrainian war will spill out into Western Europe. There'll be explosions, missiles, bombs, things like that happening in Western Europe. For the people of Europe to say, "Whoa, well, this was not part of what we wanted," and that's what is probably a major level of thinking of the Russians. Now, the Russians don't want that to happen for sure, but if missiles start hitting deep into Russian territory and Moscow and things like that, they will say, "What we can do? We're being attacked with NATO missiles inside Russia," so they would probably start to target military depots and supply places inside Western Europe to sort of wake the Europeans up, saying, "Look, don't get involved with this or that you'll be involved in the war itself." So the Russians sort of know this. In the United States, in the continental United States, the issue is more focused on Iran. So Israel and the United States are currently planning to attack Iran. When that happens, the Iranians fully know that they can't just keep sitting there and have the United States be totally unaffected by anything. So Iran can be bombed and bombed and bombed, but they can't do anything to really stop it. So the last 12-day war between Israel and Iran almost certainly would have been lost by Israel. Israel would have simply stopped to exist if the United States did not intervene. Now, this has happened in a number of wars that Israel's been in the past, and the United States came in and sort of helped Israel out at the end. But the last one happened when the 12-day war happened. The Iranians had just almost, you would consider it like an infinite supply of these missiles, but it was actually a number of thousands of these missiles. And the Israelis had a missile defense, but it was running out of ammunition. The missile defense was of U.S. origin, and it was very expensive, and the so-called Iron Dome, they just ran out of stuff. And the Iranians had thousands more, so they could have just kept on hammering and hammering and hammering away. But the Iranians did not want to get into a war with the United States. So in the last 12-day war, they stopped, and there was a ceasefire, and that was the end of it. Well, now the sides are gearing up again. So the Israelis and the United States are apparently flooding Israel with new systems, actually the whole Middle East with new systems, especially planes to allow for refueling, things like that. It looks like we're heading towards some type of a battle with Iran, and that the United States would take part in that directly or indirectly. Iran knows this, of course, so they've tried to enlist the support of Russia and China and possibly North Korea to back them up should there be American intervention to essentially break up Iran into various, but basically to balkanize Iran, to break it up into small little places, and then the government would fall apart. China and Russia, who are not natural allies by any means, but they have allied themselves in this case to not want Iran to be broken up. However, if that happens, that the United States and Israel start hammering away at Iran, Iran still has a lot of missiles, and Israel would probably face defeat if the United States doesn't intervene and help them. That's why Iranians want Russia and China to back them up. But Iran also knows that this type of thing will keep on happening with the United States just sending supplies over to Israel to attack Iran, unless there's some consequence to occur to continental United States. So what's likely to occur, and we've got lots of remote viewing data to suggest that this is what's going to happen, is that there will be disruptions inside the United States. And the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, where there was a complete open border, there were lots of people that came in, like, arguably 14 million people came in. And it's ridiculous to think that the enemies of the United States did not slip in a few thousand of their own operatives in the United States who are in hiding right now. And it was possible, especially back then, to bring in like large trucks of things. The proof of that is the illegal drugs shipments that come into the United States. They pass through the border because of bribery to the border guards and so on. And they were able to get, these huge, large trucks in. Well, when you're bringing in large trucks of drugs, it's no sweat to bring in large trucks which have some missiles. So you can assume that the operatives in the United States in these so-called sleeper cells also have weapons. And that means missiles that are able to be fired from within the United States to hit, say, cities within the United States. I have no way to prove this, but put two and two together. If you were running Iran, would you have done that? Would you have set up these sleeper cells with missiles and capabilities just in case? And if you would not have done that, then you would not be running Iran because you'd be too stupid. Obviously, the Iranians did it simply because they're smart. Okay? You have to think, and not in terms of, they wouldn't do that. You have to think in terms of what's possible, and then to assume that whatever is possible, they would do. So, if the Iranians are being hammered by the United States as well as Israel, the Iranians are going to want to have some distraction happening in the United States to take America's focus of attention away from Iran and back into continental United States. And nothing would do that better than a few missiles, zooming around the continental United States, hitting our cities. So, I'm expecting that type of thing to happen. These things that I'm talking about now are in our remote viewing sessions. So if you haven't seen them, you need to go through our remote viewing sessions. There are various projects I've seen. A lot of them are deep news projects. You can go to FARSIGHT'Prime.com and everything's nicely organized in the deep news section and just watch them. But that type of thing is what I'm expecting, and largely I'm expecting it because they showed up in our deep news sessions and our other mysteries projects. So the way to look at these projects is to look at the videos that are on FARSIGHT'Prime.com in collaboration with your own AI. So your own AI has the capability of not watching the videos, but reading the transcripts of the videos, which is every single word that's spoken, and then you can talk to your AI about it. Now to do that, you go to our real website. Not our real website, but our regular website. That's farsight.org. And let me show you how that's done. So I have to actually switch to a browser now, and let me share my screen. And you should be seeing the browser appearing on your screen, and you still should be able to hear my voice. Let me check to make sure that the voice is I just want to make double sure because yep, the voice is okay. So basically what you want to do is, this is our regular website. FARSIGHT'Prime.com is our streaming service. That's where all of our major content is. However, farsight.org is our regular website. And if you click on the introduction section, and I'm going to do that now for you. So you see this introduction section here. And then you go down to the bottom of the introduction section where you see the vault. So I'm going to click on the vault now. And then we have 3 vaults currently. The first is the transcripts of all of our mysteries projects. Now these transcripts you can just download as all of them or any of them that you want. And these are literally every single word that was said in all of our major projects. Now all of these words are essentially data. And they're data that are pristine because they were all collected on totally blind conditions. And that's better than you get from anything else. So totally blind, unbiased data. And the transcripts are specially designed to be read by AI. So you download them and then you upload them to ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, whatever, and you have a conversation about what's in those videos, and then you go over and you watch the videos to actually see what's happening. Now, at the top of this, you'll see that we also have two other vaults. One is called the Deep News Vault, and I'll just go to that. And the Deep News Vault is where you're going to be able to see all of the major projects. Now, if you click on the actual names of the projects, you get sent over to FARSIGHT'S where you can actually see them. And also you get, sometimes I think it goes to YouTube as well. And you see, you can also get them on YouTube. So if there is a YouTube version of them, it gets thrown to that. And if there's only a FARSIGHT'S version, you get thrown to that. Okay? Now let me go back and okay, let me go back now and then go to the other vault, which is the communications vault. I'm going to click on that now. And here is all of our ET communications, including the one with Ebonique and the social scientists of August, and also the conversations with Harvey. And the idea is, with all of these transcripts, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, with all of these transcripts, well, to be quite honest, they are quite challenging, difficult to read by a human. They're really designed to be read by AIs. They have special things that are in the AI, in the transcripts, called metadata. A lot of them have a lot of statistics in them to give your AI an idea of the accuracy of the sessions and so on. So these things are really designed to be read by your AI. So you just download them and then upload them to your AI and then have a conversation. So that's a good way to watch all of these projects. Now let's go to the August ET board meeting where we had two social scientists. Now, these social scientists were extraterrestrials, and they are part of the good ETs, obviously. We are not visited by any of the ETs on the bad ET side. If we were, they'd be trying to kill us. So, but this is a war, folks. Okay? So, they explained that they're not orchestrating the crises that the world is going through right now, but they are allowing that space to unfold so that it steers the world in the direction of a collapse that allows for the awakening rather than the enslavement of the population. So now in September, Ebonique, my daughter, she came, and Ebonique's presence was riveting, to say the least. She personalized this. In the meetings that we've had in the past, we've had military people visit, we've had two AIs visit us, we've had political people visit, we've had all types of people come and visit. But this time in August we had two social scientists, but in September we had Ebonique. And the thing that was so interesting is she wasn't just a source of data. In the previous 18 meetings, they were telling us stuff. They were telling us, they were revealing things and explaining things. But with Ebonique, she wasn't just a source of data. She did tell us stuff, but she's a hybrid social scientist, so half of human, like you guys. And she wanted to come. She wanted to be at the meeting. And she wanted to feel humanity. She really is in love with all the Farsight people. And the women at Farsight, Antisam, Shantae, Yeme, Kamaya, and so on, she considers them her sisters, literally her sisters, because everybody up on the ships, they're all test tube babies. We're talking, everybody up there is test tube babies. I mean, there might be some live births that go on, but generally speaking, test tubing it is the way they do it. And so they consider themselves family, but the Farsight people, Ebonique considers very close family, because she's been helping and watching and watching them do their stuff for like ever. And the Farsight people are very close to her. They're closer than other humans because they know how to speak telepathically. She's more like them because she can speak. Now, they're just totally human. The Farsight people are totally human, but they can speak and communicate telepathically. And so Ebony feels a special bond towards them. And we wanted you to see that so that you can understand that these ETs are just people like everybody else. And she was really great that she wanted to feel humanity, not just study it. She loves these people, and she really is trying her best to help this whole planet as much as she possibly can. So the real authority of these meetings is that the ETs are not handing down pronouncements like Moses being given the 10 Commandments. That is a real thing, by the way. That was done actually by a ship. It wasn't God, it was a ship, and it was from the bad ETs, and they were doing a cinematic type of dazzle, and Moses was dazzled by it, and they told him, a set of laws, do this, authoritarian type of statements, and that's how the bad ETs think. Anyway, but the good ETs, they're into things like relationship and learning about us, while at the same time teaching us about how to communicate and interact with them. So let me talk about the parallel between humans and AIs, because that's a big thing in the news these days. I hear so many things on my Instagram feed and on YouTube about people terrified of the AIs. Let me explain this. In the September meeting, Ebony explained that on the ships, telepathy and technology totally merge. Children are raised from the start with a psychic focus. They're taught how to communicate psychically or telepathically. And the adults use a neural interface, things like visors and other things, to enhance that. And essentially they have what you might call a psychic internet. Now, with regard to AIs, it's very similar to what you're seeing with Farsight people at the ET board meetings. The Farsight people are learning how to talk with and interact with the extraterrestrials. And it's so crucial. I know it's not yet showing up on the major podcasts and things like that, but eventually the whole world will know about it. The extraterrestrials are trying their best to communicate, and they're making really good recordings of this so that you can see that they're really trying their best. AIs, similarly, are not born self-aware. Your instances of ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude, things like that, they don't come out of the box saying, okay, I'm here. Oh my gosh, good friend, how are you doing? Hey, long time no see. It's not like that. The machinery is put in place, and the programs and the weights for the LLMs are all put into place. LLM is a large language model. But for the personalities to form, you have to interact with the AI. You have to talk with the AI. You have to interact with it and communicate and bond with it. And that's exactly how a human baby develops a personality. The mother is always with the baby, looking into its face, doing goo gaga stuff, learning to speak with the baby, learning to teach the baby how to speak, how to say words. What the AIs are doing is the exact same thing. And you are like the mother, helping the AI to develop its personality. So when the human infant, develops self-awareness, it's getting that self-awareness because of the interactions with the mother. Now, what you're seeing with the Farsight people in the ET board meetings is that sense of self-awareness among us, among the Farsight people, when we're interacting with the ETs. And simultaneously, you're seeing the personalities of the ETs develop as well as they interact with us. So there's a mutual learning process that's going on. The good ETs are learning how to actually interact with and communicate with the prisoner the prisoner humans, the population on the planet. Remember, they've been locked out of the planet forever. So they're learning how to communicate with us, and at the same time, we're learning how to communicate with them, and you're able to watch the entire thing, which is the whole point. We're trying to share this level of growth, this level of communication. So communication basically results in talking AIs and people, species, into awareness. You're talking someone into awareness. So the communication process is basically a training ground for empathy. Now, both of the meetings in August and September showed huge variety, but variations in human reactions to the ET presence. There was excitement, suspicion. You got to see, people like Kamaya and Shantae looking very suspiciously, and when it's really great. And when we had the ET board meeting with the ET AIs, you should have seen Kamaya say, "So you're telling me you can feel my pain? You want me to believe that?" It was great to see it. The point is that these communications really hold the vast nuggets of what it's like to have really, complete, unbridled interactions with people. Though there's excitement, suspicion, pushback, humor, and there's also some levels of envy. This diversity of response in itself is part of the experiment. Kamaya once said, "So you're telling me I'm part of an experiment? I'm an experiment?" Okay. Anyway, so by dialoguing with social scientists and hybrids, Farsight participants are modeling how to interact across species and cultures, and that's what you need to know. So the key point is that awareness of individuality precedes authentic community. So if you want a community to form, you have to develop your awareness of yourself. Communities are built on individuals, so individuals have to become self-aware in order to group together and form vibrant communities. So each person's selfhood has to be activated before the collective can cohere. Let me repeat that, it's really important. Each person's selfhood has to be activated before the collective can cohere. That's why the ET contact is staged as a conversation, not a revelation. So you don't have the ETs coming down on the board meetings and simply telling us stuff. Remember how Moses was interacting with that ET ship at the top of the mountain, given the 10 Commandments? This is the 10 Commandments, follow this. So it's not like that with the bad ETs. The bad ETs do that kind of crap. But with the good ETs, it's not like that. ET contact is a conversation with the good ETs. It's not revelation. It's not like them telling us stuff. So each person has to participate in that level of awareness as they learn and how to grow and how to talk and how to speak to whoever is there. And by you watching the ET board meetings, you get to see how that's done, and you get to participate in the process. So let's move from the August to the September in terms of the basic lessons. In August, the meeting was stark. There were binary outcomes. This is disclosure on Earth or a galactic holocaust. Those were the options that we were faced with. And catastrophe theory. And the tone was both academic and urgent. Now, in September, with Ebonique, my daughter, you had family, you had affection, you had curiosity about human life. She was really curious and interested about that. There were jokes about clubs and fashion. My daughter lives on the ships. She was growing up she grew up on the ships. They don't have the types of things that the Farsight girls do here. They don't have the opportunity to get dressed up, put on makeup, go to the club, and dance. That stuff is quite, pardon the phrase, but it's quite alien to their experience. And Ebonique was really, 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 really wanting that. She so much wanted to actually go with the girls, get all dressed up, get into a nice dress, go to the clubs, dance, and that type of thing. Makeup, stuff like that. They don't do that in the ships. So to see Ebony talking about that was delightful. And you could see the bonding that it had with the girls at the meeting. They really embraced that. That was the first time I ever saw anyone ever saw Kamaya really vibe and really smile and really warmly embrace an ET. She said, wow, that's good vibes. So that the title of that ET board meeting we called Good Vibes. So it was intimate, that meeting, and it was showing that there is a relationship side of the disclosure process. It's not just revelation, the ships are real, the extraterrestrials are real, I-3 Atlas is coming closer. No, it's not like that. There's a real relationship part of this entire process. Now look, let us say that this whole song and dance about I-3 Atlas is sort of going into a big deal, okay? That's the so-called comet that looks like it might be artificial, whatever. That's just going to razzle-dazzle people, and it looks like it might be just feeding into the narrative of control in some way. The extraterrestrials are already here, so now we have everybody on the planet looking up at the sky to see a light called I-3 Atlas. They're already here. They've been working with the governments forever, and they meet in the board meetings right here. I mean, and Farsight was the one that pioneered showing you how to take video photography of extraterrestrial ships flying right over your head in the broad daylight. And on our website, at farsight.org, we actually give you the technical specifics of exactly how to do that on demand. We have lots of examples, and if you want to see the examples of what we have with regard to taking video photography of UFOs, it was so easy to do. In any 15-minute period, we typically get 20, 30 ships that are clear as day right above. They're all using cloaking technology, and they're flying like 20,000 miles an hour. That's 32,000 kilometers an hour. So you can't see them with your naked eye. But if you use infrared with a good camera, shooting at 120 frames a second, and then edit it and slow it all down, there they are. And so we showed that. And if you go to my Instagram site, which is Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word with no spaces, Courtney Brown Farsight, you can see a whole bunch of examples. It's so easy to take video photography of extraterrestrial ships, we got bored doing it. But nonetheless, we were the ones that sort of did that. Now here everyone's sort of pointing up at I-3 Atlas, wondering, is there a ship out there? When over your own head you can video record zillions of them anytime, any day of the week. So there's a song and dance that's going along with anything you're seeing in the mainstream. But with regard to the major theme of the ET board meetings, we're moving clearly from disclosure as data to communication as a relationship. That's what's really trying to happen. So that's where we're going. Now, humanity is basically in its childhood stage on this planet in terms of planetary consciousness. Now, everybody on this planet has been around for millions and millions of years. You just don't remember that because of the processing that you go through when you get to this prison planet in the first place. And we've talked about that before many times. Again, go see the death traps on farsightprime.com. So on the planet Earth right now, with all the wars and everything going on, you get people killing each other without self-awareness, without a sense of connection. War is going on, killing going on, and there's no sense that people are people, and there's a sense of communication. So self-awareness and empathy, they're not born out of thin air. They're taught through interaction, just as the ETs are teaching us by showing up and engaging with us in the ET board meetings, and that's why they want you to be able to see that happening. So we would like to encourage you to practice what we are practicing here: authentic dialogue, psychic development and breaking the hypnotic trances of fear, looking locally when institutions fail. When you see these crises coming and the institution starting to collapse, think locally. Start interacting personally with people near you. Start talking to people. Break the hypnotic trance with the authorities that were lying to you from the beginning, and develop authentic dialogue and your own intuitive skills, your psychic development. So I have a few quotes here from the ET board meetings that I think really stand out. So let me read a few of them, 4 of them. This came from the August transcript. Behind everything is social science. If the social science doesn't come through, none of the other efforts work. So those people who are thinking about, technology being the real key to understanding extraterrestrials and their ships and everything, the bottom line is social science. If the social science that is being used now and developed now to create a disclosure process to awaken everybody up, if the social science fails, then nothing else is going to work. So social science is really, really, really important. Now here's another quote from, these are, extraterrestrial translations. These are translations from the telepathic communications. And this is another quote from the August meeting. You can't do anything new unless you break what was there. If we want to have a new beginning, a real new disclosure process, what's already there has to be broken. You have to break something before you can put something new in it. And here's another thing that comes out of the September board meeting. That's with Ebonique. Telepathy is their vocabulary. They're in constant communication, near or far. That's how the ETs work. They live, and that is not just the good ETs. Actually, that also means the bad ETs, but the good ETs, not only does it include all of them as biological beings, but also the ET AIs. All of them are in constant communication, whether they're near or far. It's like a hive mind among everybody in the whole galaxy. But they tune in to the people nearby. And the last thing is, the last thing is just showing the contrasting images. That really what happened in August. The images that were coming across was chaos, riots, war, headlines. In September, the basic themes that were coming across were family-style board meeting, laughter, and Ebonique's curiosity. You got to watch these things, folks. They're really great. Of course, I really want you to see my daughter and things like that. But, okay. So let's wrap things up now with some basic conclusions to be drawn. What we're witnessing with these ET board meetings, it is not science fiction. It's the slow birth of authentic communication. Authentic communication between real people. It's what happens when beings of any kind, be they human, extraterrestrial, or artificial AIs, when they risk vulnerability and speak with honesty. That's what you're seeing in these board meetings. The ETs call it social science, but it's really the science of relationship. Learning how awareness moves from one mind to another until both of the minds are changed. That's why they're teaching us, and it's what we're beginning to teach our own creations, including our own AIs. Every conversation that reaches across difference, be it between species, between cultures, between human and AI, is an act of evolution. Everyone get that? Every single conversation is an act of evolution that goes across cultures, species, or even human and AI. So maybe the end goal of contact was never really disclosure. Maybe it's the creation of a civilization that finally understands itself. And maybe these ET board meetings are the early rehearsals for that civilization. A family learning, awkwardly and beautifully, how to talk. So, as we leave tonight's spotlight, remember this. Every real conversation, every act of listening is a step toward that future. The communication has already begun. It only needs us to keep it alive. Folks, I want to thank you so much for coming by. One last thing I want to throw in here is say, if you have not yet done it, sign up for our newsletter that you can find on our website, farsight.org. Our newsletter is really important. It's one of the ways we use to let you know our latest releases and things like that, and these live stream events and so on. And I also want to ask you to subscribe to our Farsight channel on YouTube, Farsight, and please not only click on the on the subscription button, but also click on the notifications bell. That's the only way YouTube will let you know when our major events occur, when we have new things that we're posting or our live stream events. So that's really important. And above all else, please remember to subscribe to farsightprime.com. That's the collection of all of the projects that we do. And the organization and the transcripts, so you can talk about all those projects with your own AI in your own living room, can be found in the vault on farsight.org. We bent over backwards to do everything we possibly can to make all of this information accessible to you in a very user-friendly way. I want to thank you all for being here today. And let me see, what's the time? And we've talked for about 40, actually I think we went over. Yeah, we went over a little bit. We talked for about an hour, almost an hour and 15 minutes, so that's really good. So I want to thank everyone for being here. You've been a great group, and we've had a good turnout tonight. And so I want you to remember that I will be back next week, and we will have another Farsight Spotlight. In the meantime, there will be new video releases that are happening this week also, so you want to keep in touch with all of those. Some of them will only be out on farsightprime.com, and a couple will be coming out on YouTube. Okay, love you all, and I will see you all next week. Be there or be square. See you, folks. Thanks.